The metal under his palm had gone ice cold. 47 ships hung in the dark past the viewport, engines lit, guns already warm, and every one of them pointed at the deck beneath his feet. He did not run. He did not answer them yet. He did not put the mug down. 20,000 years, and this was the moment the silence finally spoke back. A human woman had recorded a message for exactly this day. He had played it so many times he could hear the catch in her breath without pressing the switch. The mug in his hand was chipped along the rim, the letters on its side worn almost to nothing. World's passable pilot. He had asked 11 scholars what the word passable meant in the old tongue, and none of them had agreed. He still didn't know. His thumb found the crack anyway, the way it always did now. Behind him, the bridge of the Meridian's wake held its breath. Dust he had not managed to clear in 9 days drifted through a shaft of red warning light. The console under the dust had been cold for 20,000 years, and it was cold now. On the main display, 4 words sat in stark green text, sent from the flagship of the Vorthani 3rd Expansion Fleet. "Stand aside or be destroyed." He set the mug down on the console, carefully, the way a man sets down something that might still break after all this time. Then he opened the channel to answer. "I have watched 31 species die," he said, and his voice did not shake, though his left hand did. "I know what extinction looks like. This is not extinction." The fleet did not respond, not yet. Somewhere in that silence, a decision was being made that would outlast every person listening to it. You will want to know how a species disappears for 20,000 years and still gets the last word. So did I. None of it had started with ships or threats. It had started with a smell. 9 days earlier, the smell inside the newly opened hangar bay of the Ascendancy had been recycled air and the metal tang of freshly cut hull plating, and underneath both of those, something older. Something that did not belong to any known Vorthani alloy. High Commander Drakon Vex stood at the head of the war room with his claws laced behind his back, watching the object rotate on the display. Bronze-scaled, ridge-backed, 2.5 meters of a man who had not blinked during a confrontation in over 60 years. And he did not blink now. "Unregistered," he said. "No beacon, no transmission." It drifted into our space like a corpse looking for a grave. He tapped one claw against his sleeve, the gesture he made right before he dismissed someone. "Salvage it. Strip it. Whatever is inside belongs to the Directorate." At the edge of the room, an old scholar named Thessa cleared her throat. She was the only one who had voted against him, and everyone in the chamber had already stopped listening to her. "That hull pattern isn't dead," Thessa said. "I've seen dead ships." This one was parked. Vex's claw tapped once more. The matter was closed before it opened. That was the last time anyone in that room used the word salvage without flinching. Senior Archivist Thalvith received the summons 2 hours later, in the small archive office he had occupied for most of his 2 centuries of service. He read the coordinates twice before he believed them. Then he picked up the black river stone that lived on his desk, the one he had carried since he was young enough not to know why, and put it in his pocket out of habit rather than reason. His assistant, Kevax, met him at the shuttle bay with a data slate already open. "They're calling it debris." "It isn't debris." Thalvith had not seen the object yet. He said it anyway, and he was right. The ship was 432 meters of dark, curved hull, and it did not drift the way wreckage drifts. It held its heading. Its airlocks were sealed from the inside, not blown open, not breached. Simply closed, the way a door is closed by someone who intends to come back. Thalvith pressed his palm to the outer hull plating. Faint letters had been etched there, worn by time but not erased, in a script his eye recognized half a second before his mind caught up with it. He had spent 2 centuries studying dead languages. He had never expected one of them to still be warm. "Human," he said to no one, and then said it again into his comm, because saying a thing once has never made it feel true. The interior of the Meridian's wake was cold and dim, and more than anything else, orderly. No scorch marks, no shattered plating, no bodies. Thalvith moved through the corridor with his team of 12 behind him, their boots too loud in a silence that had not been disturbed in 20,000 years. "This is not a corpse," he told them, when the youngest of the group asked if the crew had died here. "This is a museum. They found the crew quarters on the 3rd level. 32 beds, each one made, each one empty. Blankets folded in the same precise corner fold, as if the whole crew had stood up at the same moment and simply walked away." A photograph of a mountain range sat on one shelf, curling slightly at the edges. A child's drawing, crayon on paper gone brittle and yellow, was still taped to a bulkhead near the door, a sun, a house, 3 stick figures holding hands. And on the small table nearest the door, a ceramic mug, chipped along the rim, the words on its side almost gone. World's passable pilot. Thalvith reached for it before he decided to. His hand closed around the handle, and it trembled, and he did not know why. He had held artifacts 3 times this age without his hand ever once shaking. Behind him, Kavax's voice dropped to something careful. "Sir, you should see the data core." Thalvith did not answer right away. He was still looking at the mug, at the crack near the rim, at 32 beds made by hands that had known they weren't coming back to unmake them. In a moment, he said. He did not move. He turned back to Kavax at last, mug still in hand, and let the crew quarters fall away behind him. The data core sat in a chamber 2 decks down, unmarked except for a single line of human script etched into its casing. Thalvith did not need a translator to read it anymore. The words had settled into him the way a language does after enough hours spent inside it. Regord, listen, then decide. He set the mug on the console beside the core. Gently, the crack facing outward, Kavax reached to power the unit, and Thalvith stopped him with a raised hand. "Not yet," he said. "Log everything first. If this kills the ship's power, I want to know exactly what we touched." It was a methodical instinct, the same one that had kept him alive through 31 dead worlds. It also bought him 3 more minutes before he had to know. When the core finally woke, it did not flood the room with data the way Vorthani archives did. A single file loaded. A single date stamp, meaningless in any calendar he owned. A single runtime, 14 minutes. He played it. A woman's face filled the display, small and tired, dark hair pulled back, a tear in the shoulder of her jacket that no one had bothered to mend. Behind her, lights flickered in a rhythm that meant the ship around her was already being shut down system by system. "My name is Dr. Sanvi Patel," she said. "If you're watching this, you found us before we wanted to be found, or we're finally ready. I genuinely don't know which one it is yet, because I'm recording this before either happens." Thalva's hand found the riverstone in his pocket without his permission. "We are not extinct," Patel said. "We are not hiding because we're weak. The recording stuttered. A block of corrupted data ate 3 full seconds, and her voice returned mid-sentence, flattened and wrong. "Call it the silent protocol. I can't explain it properly yet. The file's still assembling itself as I record over it. Ask me again later." The screen went dark. 14 minutes, and he had heard perhaps 40 seconds of them clearly. Kavax exhaled behind him. "That's it. That's the whole message." "No," Thalvith said. "That's the version we're allowed to have first." He did not know why he believed that. He believed it anyway. They spent the next 3 days combing every deck of the Meridian's wake, and the ship kept teaching them the same lesson from different rooms. Nothing here had died. Everything here had simply stopped, mid-motion, and waited. In the medical bay, one bed held a small stuffed animal, sewn crudely, one eye a mismatched button. A name tag on the sheet above it read Aisha, 7. Beside the tag, in smaller handwriting, someone had added, "She likes drawing animals with chalk." "Please don't lose this if you find it before we come back." Thalvith stood in front of it for a long time. He had catalogued mass graves before. He had catalogued the bones of children on 3 different worlds, and he had done it clinically, the way the job demanded. This was worse. This was a bed made up for a child who had simply been told to leave it and had trusted whoever told her enough to go. He did not touch the sheet. He photographed it, logged it, and moved on because that was the only way he had ever survived his own work. On the 4th day, the Directorate's patience ran out. The transmission arrived stamped with Vex's authority code, and it was short. Report status: salvage assessment overdue. The Directorate does not fund archaeology for its own sake. Thalvith answered honestly, which was in hindsight his first mistake. "This is not salvage. This is contact. Recommend full science protocol, minimum 30 additional days." The reply took 4 hours. When it came, it was shorter than the first. "Denied. You have 9 days. After that, the ship becomes Directorate property. Full strip authorization. 9 days." He had already used 3 of them standing in front of a child's bed he couldn't bring himself to disturb. He returned to the data core on the 5th day and made himself watch the 14 minutes again, all the way through, twice, listening past the corruption for anything the static hadn't eaten. The second time, he caught something new, not in the words but underneath them. A low tone running beneath Patel's voice, almost too faint to register as sound at all. He isolated it, cleaned it, played it alone. It was not noise, it had shape, rhythm. It repeated on an interval so long that a human lifetime wouldn't have been enough to hear it loop even once. That's not part of her recording, Kevak said, reading the waveform over his shoulder. That's older. She recorded over something that was already here. Thalbith's thumb found the crack in the mug without him deciding to reach for it. Then she wanted us to find both, he said. The 6th day brought the first true break in the pattern. Buried in the ship's navigation logs Thalbith almost hadn't thought to check. Because a parked ship shouldn't need them, he found the Meridian's wake's full approach vector into Vorthani space. It was not drift. Drift did not correct itself 4 times over 8 months to hold a heading with that kind of precision. Someone or something had steered this ship here on purpose, then shut every system down and let it coast the last leg in silence, so that nothing about its arrival would look intentional. It was aimed, he said aloud, to no one the way he'd said human on the first day. This whole thing was aimed at us. He looked at the date on the corrupted file again. 14 minutes of message buried under a tone with a loop longer than memory, delivered by a ship that had steered itself into the exact space where it would be found, and every piece of it timed to arrive now, in this century, not the one before, not the one after. Someone had done the math on when the Directorate would be listening. He did not yet know how long ago that math had been done. Part of him already suspected the answer would not fit inside a number he was prepared to hold. The 7th day, the Directorate stopped asking politely. A new transmission arrived, this one not from a clerk relaying Vex's orders, but from Vex himself, his frost-cold voice filling the small archive chamber for the first time. Archivist. I am told you have found human writing, and a recording you refuse to release to the Council. A pause, the sound of a claw tapping once against a console. You have 2 days remaining on your grant. On the 3rd, I'm bringing a fleet to collect what belongs to the Directorate, whether or not you have finished being sentimental about it. The channel closed before Thalbith could answer. He looked at Kevax. Kevax looked at the data core, and at the mug beside it, and did not say anything at all, because there was nothing useful left to say. 2 days, 14 minutes of message still half unheard, a tone underneath it with no bottom he'd found yet. Thalbith picked the mug up, turned it once in his hands, and set it back down facing the door. The way he realized only after doing it, a person sets something down when they expect to need it again in a hurry. Then we don't sleep, he said, until we know what she was trying to tell us. Behind him, on the display, the corrupted section of the recording flickered once, unprompted, as if something in the file had been waiting for exactly that sentence to be spoken aloud. Vex's fleet was already moving before Thalbith finished reading the transmission twice. The scan alert came first. 47 signatures breaking formation from Directorate space, engines hot, vector locked on the Meridian's wake. Not 2 days. Vex had lied about the 2 days. They're early, Kevax said, voice flat with the particular calm of someone too frightened to sound frightened. They're not waiting for the grant to expire. Thalbith didn't answer. He was already moving back toward the data core, the corrupted section still flickering faintly on the display where he'd left it, as if it had been waiting for him too. He isolated the buried tone again, the one underneath Patel's voice, older than her recording, patient in a way nothing built by hands should be able to sound. This time he ran it through the ship's own translation matrix instead of the Directorate's, the way a man tries a lock with a key that was actually cut for it. The tone resolved into words. We hear you. We have heard you for a long time. We are not ready to answer yet. Not human words. Not Vorthani. A third voice, buried under the second, buried under the first, a message inside a message inside a message, the way a scholar buries their most dangerous find under enough ordinary layers that only someone patient enough would ever dig to the bottom. That's not Patel, Kevax whispered. That's not even human phrasing. No, Thalbith said. His hand found the river stone in his pocket, and for the first time in 2 centuries, rubbing it did not calm him at all. I don't think it is. He went back to Patel's recording a 3rd time, and this time, instead of listening for what she said, he watched what she did. Her eyes kept flicking to something off-screen, low and to the left, every time she paused. Not nerves. A glance a person gives to check a clock or a reading, or someone else in the room she wasn't naming. He froze the frame at the 12th minute and enhanced the corner of the shot she kept glancing toward. A second console half in shadow counter-scrolling numbers too fast to read live. He slowed it down. One number held steady at the bottom while the others climbed. a countdown already most of the way through whatever it was counting toward even as she recorded. She wasn't just leaving a message, Thalvith said slowly. She was recording against a deadline. Something else was already happening while she spoke. Kevax leaned in. Happening where? Thalvith didn't answer, because he had just noticed something else. Small and easy to miss the first 2 times through. On Patel's wrist, half hidden by her torn sleeve, was a mark. Not a wound. A tattoo. Plain block letters, the kind a person gets when they want to remember something even if they lose everything else. He couldn't read it at this resolution. He made a note to fix that later. He never got the chance before the ship's proximity alarm cut through the chamber like a struck bell. Vex's fleet had entered visual range. The pre-twist comm lasted almost no time at all, and Thalvith used every second of it anyway. He sat at the console, poured nothing, drank nothing, simply rested both hands flat on the cold metal and breathed the recycled air of a room that had waited 20,000 years for someone patient enough to sit still in it. The letters resolved slowly, degraded by the same corruption eating the rest of the file, but legible at last, 2 words, and beneath them, a shape he recognized from every human artifact aboard this ship, a small, precise sun. Outside, the 47 ships would take another 11 minutes to reach effective range. He had 11 minutes of ordinary time left before whatever this became stopped being ordinary at all. He used 4 of them enhancing Patel's tattoo, the same sun drawn in crayon on the bulkhead near a child's empty bed. Still here. He sat back. The mug on the console caught the last of the archive lighting, chip and fade and all, and for the first time he understood, not guessed, understood what passable had meant on its side all along. Not skilled, not impressive, enough. A species that had learned to survive on being just enough, quietly, for 20,000 years, while everyone who mattered decided that quiet meant gone. The proximity alarm changed pitch. 7 minutes now. He almost didn't check the navigation logs a second time. It was Kevax who thought of it, flipping back through the approach vector data while Thalvith worked the recording, looking for anything they'd missed in the rush of the first 6 days. Sir, Kevax's voice had gone strange, the ship's original heading, before it corrected toward us. Where it was coming from, he pulled the trace up on the second display. The vector ran backward, away from Vorthani space entirely, out past the edges of every surveyed sector the Directorate had ever charted, toward a point that had no name in any Vorthani star map because no Vorthani ship had ever survived long enough to reach it and report back. Somewhere in the buried third voice, in the countdown ticking behind Patel's shoulder, in a heading aimed at the one place every spacefaring species in the galaxy quietly agreed not to go, the shape of something enormous was assembling itself, one piece at a time. The galactic core. Thalvith stood very still, faster than he could hold it steady in his mind. She wasn't just warning us about herself, he said. She was warning us about what's still out there. Whatever her people went dark for, it's still counting down. The comm crackled. Vex's voice filled the chamber. Closer now. Closer than the fleet's numbers should have allowed. Archivist, stand down and open the airlock. He opened a channel to every ship in the fleet instead, and behind him, unnoticed in the last of the archive light, the corrupted section of the recording finished assembling itself at last. And a fourth voice, older than the third. This is your final courtesy. Thalvith looked at the mug, at the frozen frame of a tired woman, glancing at a clock only she could see, at a heading pointed at the one silence the whole galaxy had agreed to leave unbroken. He did not open the airlock. Patient past any measure Thalvith had instruments began, for the first time in 20,000 years, to speak. The fourth voice did not sound like Patel. It did not sound human at all, no breath behind it, no throat shaping it. Just a signal that had been waiting so long to be heard that it had learned patience as a kind of grammar. You have found the marker, it said, in words the ship's matrix rendered flat and plain. You are early, or you are exactly on time. We have not decided which, because you have not yet decided who you are. Thalvith stood with the open channels still lived to Vex's fleet, and for one full second he said nothing to either voice, human or otherwise, because both of them were waiting on him now. Then he spoke, and let both channels carry it. My name is Senior Archivist Thalvith, he said. I have watched 31 species die. I know what extinction looks like. His hand was steady on the console. His voice was not shaking anymore. This is not extinction. This is a species that chose to stop speaking rather than be silenced. They have been watching us for 20,000 years. We called them dead. We were arrogant. On the display, the countdown behind Patel's frozen shoulder ticked past its final visible digit and held there, waiting, the way everything on this ship had been built to wait. Vex's voice cut back in, closer now, no longer patient at all. Archivist. 47 ships held position outside the Meridian's wake, and inside the war room of his flagship. Thalvith could picture it exactly. You are broadcasting classified material on an open directorate channel. Stand down. No, Thalvith said. The fleet did not fire immediately. That more than anything told Thalvith that Vex's certainty had a crack in it too, however small, however new. Having stood in 100 rooms just like it, High Commander Drakon Vex would be staring at a message he had spent 60 years of service refusing to imagine could exist. A species that had chosen silence on purpose, not defeat, not death. Strategy older than his entire empire. Bring the Archivist and the core to my flagship, Vex said finally, and his voice had lost its frost. Now before this reaches the Council unfiltered. It already has, Thalvith said. I copied the transmission to every listening post in Directorate space 11 seconds ago. The silence that followed was the longest one of Thalvith's 2 centuries. The fourth voice spoke once more, and this time it was brief. The signal you have been afraid of for 1.2 billion years is still moving. It said, we did not go silent to hide from you. We went silent to listen for it properly. That is the only kind of listening loud enough to survive. Your empire has 8,400 years of history and has never once tried it. Thalvith thought of Thessa, dismissed in a war room with one tap of a claw. He thought of 32 beds made by hands that trusted a plan bigger than any single life inside it. He thought of a child's chalk sun taped to a bulkhead and a tattoo on a tired woman's wrist that said the only thing that had ever mattered. Still here. He reached for the mug on the console, the way he had reached for it on the first day without deciding to, and this time his hand did not tremble at all. Then teach us how, he said. There was no answer to that. Not yet. The fourth voice had said what it came to say, and the file closed itself the way it had opened quietly, on its own schedule, indifferent to whether anyone was ready. Vex's fleet held position for 6 more minutes. Then, one by one, the 47 ships began to power down their weapons, not because they had been ordered to, but because somewhere in a war room light years away, a council that had just heard an unfiltered broadcast was already demanding answers Vex did not have. It was never going to be. 3 days later, the Meridian's wake was still parked exactly where it had always been, except now it was ringed by Directorate research vessels instead of a salvage fleet. He did not come aboard. He did not apologize. His final transmission was 3 words, clipped and cold. The closest thing to a retreat a man like him would ever permit himself. This isn't finished. No, Thalvith agreed. To an empty channel. It isn't. And Thessa stood on its bridge instead of being dismissed from a war room half a galaxy away. They're calling it the greatest error in Vorthani history, she said, watching the data cores cycle through the last of its files. 8,000 years of certainty, and it took 1 recording to crack it. Not 1 recording, Thalvith said. 1 recording, 32 empty beds, and a child's drawing nobody threw away. He picked up the mug from the console where he'd left it, turned it once in his hands. The crack near the rim caught the light the same way it had on the first day. The letters were exactly as faded as they'd always been. World's passable pilot. He understood it now, all of it, the way you understand a word only after you've lived long enough beside its meaning. Passable had never meant small. It had meant enough to last, enough to wait 20,000 years in a parked ship with the beds made, in case anyone patient enough ever came looking. What happens now? Thessa asked. Now the Directorate finds out what it feels like to be the species that was told to wait, Thalvith said. I imagine we're not very good at it yet. That night, alone in the archive chamber, he played the recording one final time, not to learn anything new from it, but because some things deserve to be watched all the way through simply as a courtesy. Patel's face filled the screen, tired, torn sleeve, the tattoo on her wrist just visible now that he knew to look for it. She reached the corrupted section, and this time, having heard the fourth voice underneath it, he understood the shape her silence had always been holding. The recording ended. The chamber went quiet, the particular quiet of a room that had finally been listened to instead of catalogued. Thalvith set the mug down on the console one last time, facing the door, the way he always set it down now without meaning to. The crack was still there, the letters were still faded. He did not need it to mean anything more than that. Outside the viewport, past the ring of research ships, the dark between the stars held perfectly still, the way it had held still for 20,000 years, waiting on nothing but time, and now at last on an answer.